Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, September the 8th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Let's try that again. Out of it all. Before we do get started, I do have to sit there and say we are a family-friendly podcast. We do try to watch our language, but sometimes words do fly at the same time. There may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for young viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. All right, so, I always say this about the South, that between Texas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida is the biggest game of hold my beer. Except for the simple fact of the matter is, Texas decided to sit there and up the ante, not only with signing a crazy abortion law into effect, which SCOTUS now ignored, but now they're going after voting rights. Observe.
A controversial elections bill in Texas has just been signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott. Back in July, Texas Democrats broke quorum, you'll remember. In the state assembly, they traveled to Washington, D.C. to protest that GOP effort to change voting in Texas. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us now from the state capitol in Austin. So, Priscilla, bring us up to speed here. What sorts of changes will take effect now?
Well, the governor signed that bill moments ago and held it up and proudly declared that election integrity is now the law here in Texas. But that is going to change things for the more than 16.6 million registered voters here. It is going to ban overnight and drive-through voting, something that was very popular in Harris County and Houston. It's going to create new criminal penalties for election workers. For example, if they want to send those unsolicited vote-by-mail applications to people who automatically qualify, that now becomes a felony. Meanwhile, it bolsters protections for partisan poll watchers, creates new voter ID requirements for vote by mail, and also new rules for people who are assisting voters. So lots of changes to come here on the ground with that new bill being signed and expected to go into effect officially within 90 days. Lindsay?
Priscilla,
Aaron?
what are you hearing from Texas Democrats about this?
Yeah. Well, Democrats are still not happy about this. And what they are saying is that there's 90 days until this bill goes into effect. There is still time for federal lawmakers to act. We saw some federal protections being passed in the House within the past several weeks, and they're calling on the Senate to act and for something to get done on this. They say that they, broke quorum, they lobbied those lawmakers, did all that they could, and now it is extremely dire and important that they act. But of course, Republicans are saying this is making our election safer, this is streamlining the process across the state, and you even heard the governor and other leaders saying that this could be an example for other states moving forward looking to pass new voting laws.
This will protect elections. Okay, so this is the lie that Republicans love to tell. Considering the fact the last election in which Trump lost was by far the most safest election ever, in which there was almost virtually zero counts of voter fraud. The voter fraud they did find was mostly toward Republicans. I have said this once, I will keep saying this. Republicans are trying to set up the field for 2022. 2022 is the midterm elections, which means that the House and Senate will be up for grabs, which means that also locally in your cities and states will be up for grabs. Guys, understand what the Republicans are doing. They tried to bet it all against Trump when they allowed mail-in voting, when they allowed drive-through voting, when they allowed so many other things that actually are convenient. Considering in this pandemic area, it is convenient to vote. If you can vote by mail, cool. If you can vote by drop-in ballot, cool. If you can draw, if you have a drive-in mail, if you have a drive-through for voting, even better. To me, those are all convenient things. But Republicans now see them as threats because they know, no, well, number one, they know their base is dying out. Their Republican base is dying out. They know this. So what they're basically doing, folks, is they're trying to make it harder to vote. They're specifically seeing that, and I tell people all the time, what happened is they're seeing what happened in Georgia. And when Georgia tried to pass their voting laws, which they're trying to make it harder for, let's be honest, minorities to vote, because Georgia turned blue, elected its first black senator, and again gave the state to Biden in the electoral college votes. So Texas saw that and was like, no, we cannot allow that. Even though Texas as a whole went to Trump. Went to Trump as a red state. So again, the whole point of this with Greg Abbott, aside from the fact that he's against the whole thing he said about God gave us internal rights about abortion, which I still think it's crazy that religion somehow enters into politics, but just goes to show you that yeah, it does. And at the same time, they're going after voting rights. And I keep saying this, guys, and I will never stop saying this. If you think for 1 second your vote doesn't matter, why are they trying so hard to make it more difficult for you to vote? If voting didn't matter, why is it so difficult? I mean, why are they making it so difficult? And the fact they're saying it's voting integrity, no, they're targeting minorities. They are targeting minorities because very soon Caucasians will be the minority. And that's a scary thought for somebody that's been on the top for a very long time. So again, I mean, at this point, why I have to ask this to Congress? Why isn't the For the People Act? Why isn't the John Lewis Acts? Why haven't both those voting laws? I'm sorry, excuse me, those potential laws. Why haven't they been passed yet? Why is not that the first? See, that's why I said it doesn't sit right with me about Democrats sometimes. Democrats can say all the right things, but yet when they get office, when they get power, they're never together. Say what you want about Republicans. Say what you want about them. But what Republicans do best, they stick together. Everybody toes the party line. Democrats can take a lesson from that because again, Joe Manchin, I could talk about him all day that he's the linchpin to a lot of stuff. And the fact that he is basically a gift to Republicans this year. He is. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the For the People Act and the John Lewis Act would have prevented both of these laws from happening. Because we need federal voting protection laws from states that are going to go after minorities. Because they won't say it, but let's be honest, what are these laws dictated toward? Minorities. They are dictated toward the elderly. They are dictated toward anybody else that isn't conservative, because it's very likely that conservatives have the means and have the setups to be able to go vote. Voting should be a national holiday. Nobody should have to decide whether or not to go in and go work or go in and go vote. And we should be making voting easier. I mean, if we're all about the democracy, we should be making voting a hell of a lot easier, not more difficult. And that's what it is. It's difficult. Because so many other factors for people to go vote, even early voting. I mean, let's hope they don't go up to that. I enjoy early voting. I enjoy early voting because number one, it's convenient. Number two, it's early. Number three, I'm not in line as long. And number four, it definitely reduces the wait time if you go in on election night. But watch. If Republicans have it their way, there'll be no such thing as early voting. Or you have to jump through a whole bunch of hurdles to get to early voting. But again, we'll follow that story as it goes along. Another thing I wanted to point out is this: that a lot of people are worried about their kids in school, especially during the pandemic. But there is a growing issue as far as knowing that there is a divide between white students and minority students, and you can definitely tell that during the pandemic just because of a lot of things, especially including remote learning. And that's true. I mean, kids, especially minorities, have dealt with a lot for the last year and a half, and a lot of those things could be could be really prevented. Let's try the word again, prevented. Um, Especially in the way of education. I have been saying this. I have been saying this because it first started off with President Obama. Also, President Biden is saying the same thing, that broadband should be available everywhere. Broadband internet access should be available everywhere, almost in every home. I mean, yeah, I mean, for most white homes, there may be a computer, a tablet, a smart device, things of that nature. Not so much in the minority, but that's because in the minority, they may not have those things, especially for remote learning. I mean, I can say here in Nashville, when they started doing remote learning, the fact that they gave out well over 1,000 laptops just for kids to be able to be able to learn from school from home, because it was just too dangerous to be out in public with COVID-19. Also, at the same time, and I keep saying this because it gets lost in translation. That every time we sit there and say there's an issue with minority students not getting the same opportunities, it's true. It's not getting the same opportunities. Imagine, for example, because education is not leveled. It's not. Education isn't leveled. Depending on where you go, you might actually have a better chance in life depending on your education. This is fact. That being said, however, minority students are always not given enough. In my opinion, they're not given enough. They're not giving enough education. They're not being taught the right things. They're not being given the right opportunities. And it's always that oh, he came through so much. He had to work so much harder than everybody else. Why are we clapping for that? The fact that you have to sit there and go, say for instance, a student, she worked so much harder because of where she was. We should be asking the question of why that's still there in 2021. We should be asking the question of why are minority students still struggling? Why are minority students still having obstacles in front of them? Because we can't keep, I mean, for lack of better words, you can't say it's the system, because the system was designed this way to allow some, but not all. And at the same time, just with don't get me wrong, it is a melting pot of issues, but the issues that we can help, I'm like, for one, we really need to revamp education. Public education has went down the toilet. Even in my day and age, when if I ever have future children, I used to advocate public school because I'm a public school. I'm a product of public school. But at the time, public school was great because they allowed the teachers to teach, and we didn't just teach to learn a test. They actually taught us how to think. We actually got we actually got what I like to call critical and logical processing, to where we can approach a problem, not just learn a problem just to pass a test. And we definitely didn't have the stupid Common Core, which again is idiotic. It is the idiotic form of just education altogether. But what I'm saying is, I can't sit there and say it now because, if I have future children, no, they're going to private school. Why? It seems to be the quality education that I know that if they got that, they got a better chance of life. But again, a lot of people don't have that option. So since a lot of people don't have that option, this is the reason why I sit there and I say the simple fact of the matter, guys, things have to change. I mean, every child should be given an equal footing, but at the same time, we have to get beyond this, is what I'm saying. But moving right along, of course, there is some sadder news just because Americans feel like there's plenty of jobs out there, not saying that they're crappy jobs because they are crappy jobs, but because America doesn't want to keep their people safe and at home, the powers that be decided that unemployment benefit bonuses need to stop.
The enhanced federal jobless benefits that had been in place to help unemployed Americans during the pandemic have now expired. So what does it mean for the millions who had been receiving those checks? Here's ABC's White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks.
Tonight, more than 7 million Americans are losing unemployment benefits put in place during the pandemic. April Stokes, an optician and single mom, has not worked full-time since schools closed early last year, unable to find affordable childcare for her 2 kids.
I have 4 job interviews this week. Getting a job's never been an issue. It's what do I do with the kids when they get off at school at 4 until 7 o'clock when I get home from work.
She says those expanded unemployment payments have kept her family afloat.
Realistically, have no idea where I go from here.
Most Republican-controlled states have already rolled back the expanded benefits. Some conservatives arguing they hurt the economy by keeping people out of the workforce. But now 3 federal programs are formally ending. The programs had expanded payments to gig workers and the self-employed, extended payments for the long-term unemployed, and included an additional $300 a week on top of payments from the states. Some economists calling this week a pending benefits cliff. Others worried about the impact on spending as benefits dry up.
Now, the White House has been pushing for that budget deal that would have funding for childcare and other worker benefits, but they have been adamant about not extending these unemployment programs. They say that states can, but many states say they just don't have the budgets.
Crazy, isn't it? That, instead of making sure that people have what they need, we're just going to go ahead and cut your benefits. And yes, conservative states, Republicans, that have sat there and said, because again, this is this whole thing, this myth that, people are lazy. These people are lazy. They're collecting checks, and that they don't want to work, but they want to sit home and collect checks. That we no. Now when I have to go in, now when I have to work, now when I have to do all this, see, that's the argument. The argument is, why should somebody who doesn't want to work get paid while I have to go in? Because that's how Republicans have always gotten white people. Well, not thinking white people. I mean, there's some white people that think out there, but you're not the ones I'm talking about. But they get the gullible ones, in my opinion. And they're gullible because, let me get this straight, you're angry because your job, you have to work, and you're seeing somebody who's probably who is in a less unfortunate space than you are. You're mad because you're not able to be them and be in a worse off situation. That your jealousy is that you're not them? Because I never understood that. My thing is, if you have a great job, because I say job because I rather, you rather have a career. Nobody loves a job. Very few people love a job. But the point I'm making is the fact of how they look at it. For example, a lot of the minority, again, a lot of them are not working by choice. A lot of them are working out of safety, which again, they don't want to sit there and say. They don't want to sit there and say a lot of them are working for safety, are not working because of safety. Because again, COVID-19 is out there. A lot of you guys are unvaccinated. And then at the same time, a lot of these jobs out here, mostly fast food joints, are not paying well. And I have been saying this since the pandemic started. There has been an awakening of a lot of people who have sat there. Well, actually, it's twofold. Let me start twofold. Number one, when the pandemic started, a lot of jobs disappeared. A lot of people weren't able to find work. Unfortunately, because business has adapted to the current times, a lot of those jobs will not come back. A lot of those jobs were gone forever. A lot of people who were used to, spending years at a job may have came to the terms that, number one, the job's not coming back. So now it's like, what do I do now? But at the same time, if all that you were good at and that industry has disappeared, what do you expect those people to do? Especially those people have homes, they have apartments, utilities, children. I mean, the bills are still going to keep coming in, regardless if you have a job or not. The bills are still coming in. So unemployment was a lifeline for a lot of people. Still is it's still for a lot of people. Now, that extra bonus money, which again is amazing to me, that it should have been more, because again, everything has gone up in the U.S. except your paycheck. So the bonus on top of the unemployment has helped out a lot of people. No argument there. None whatsoever. That being said, it's always been the Republican side of this that they don't tell the whole picture. Again, they go for gullible white people. They're at home collecting welfare and unemployment while you have to work, and that ain't right. You're right, Phil. That ain't right. I shouldn't have to go out here and go work in a factory for 80 hours a week while, Tyrone and them can sit home and collect welfare checks, unemployment, and be living the high life. which again is the BS lie that they tell. Again, guys, when it comes to unemployment, it still needs to continue. It didn't have to continue if we had turned around when this pandemic started and just paid people to stay home. And you know what? They cannot say above all else, they cannot say we don't have the money for it. We just found out that these wars, these 2-decade-long wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, are going to cost the U.S. in time nearly $8 trillion. Trillion with a T. $8 trillion we're going to be paying for the next several years for the decades-long war. We got stuck with the bill, but not PMCs, military contractors, and everybody else and defense military companies that have made a boatload of cash during those wars. But the American taxpayer is stuck with the bill. But again, $8 trillion in a war. Imagine what we could have done with $8 trillion. Paid off student loans for everybody. Could have raised the minimum wage, which still again needs to be raised, and I get a story about that very soon. We could have paid for everybody to go to college. Everybody wanted to go to college could have went tuition free. The thing about it is amazing to me that in the middle of all that, during this pandemic, we had the opportunity to listen to Bernie Sanders and go, every American should get $2,000 a month until this pandemic is over. And you know what they said? When Bernie Sanders said that? We can't afford it. You know who also said that? Republicans. What are Republicans doing right now? We're gonna lose the incentive on the unemployment to make you go find work. Remember I sat there and said at the beginning of this point there was an awakening that a lot of folks realized that it's just not worth their jobs. It's not worth the pay they're getting to work the jobs that they're at, so they're quitting. And I always said this, American people have a lot of clout when they all work together. A lot of people have quit their jobs. You know, the same people, those very same Republicans and conservatives who, look at fast food. They use fast food. Oh, you don't have to work a job that a teenager would work. Well, what if it's the only job in town? You got to understand the hospitality industry when it comes to fast food and hotels and things of that nature is big in a lot of areas. McDonald's and all those other corporations know what they're doing when they put out these places because again, they know the area, they know the education of some, but they also know that people got to work. And for the longest time, guys, that used to be the working formula. That, hey, you may not have a degree, but here, come work here. At least you'll get paid $9, $10, $11, $12 an hour. And, one person sitting there saying, well, I'm not going to work this job. This isn't going to keep a roof over my head or this, that, and the other. But if you're just one person and everybody else is working, you get lost in the noise. But when a great number of people have realized it's just not worth it and all leave, the impact is great. Just like those same conservatives, they'll turn around and sit there and say, well, why don't you find a better job with better pay? And you wonder why you're in line now at 9 o'clock at night with 12 or 10 cars around the block of this fast food joint. It's because that fast food joint is short-staffed. Or it's because they have to close early because they don't have enough staff for the hours. You can't get mad at what you just said because a lot of people sit there and said, you know what? You're right. I can't find something better. And you're affected. If only we paid these people. From the jump street. If we stuck with this $2,000 pandemic thing, nobody would be looking at unemployment because we do have the money. We just need to actually admit that. That being said, guys, I'm going to move forward on to Afghanistan just because, again, conservatives have found their albatross. So they're going to hang around for Biden's neck, especially into the midterms. But just some news regarding our state of that since our withdrawal.
On a tarmac in northern Afghanistan, plane loads of stranded people, including Americans, prevented from taking off for days. In Qatar, Secretary of State Tony Blinken says they're working with the Taliban to get those private flights in the air.
They've said that they will let people with travel documents freely depart. We will hold them to that.
But with President Biden already facing fierce criticism for leaving Americans behind when he withdrew U.S. troops, now a top Democrat is slamming the administration for not doing more to help Americans at that airport. Senator Richard Blumenthal saying, I have been deeply frustrated, even furious at our government's delay and inaction. Also left behind more than 100 Afghan journalists with the Voice of America, funded by the U.S. government, who fear Taliban targets on their back for working for the U.S., especially the women. We spoke today with Aisha Tanzim, now in Pakistan, one of the few able to get out.
What hope is there to get them out?
They're just really very afraid right now that the evacuation's technically over. They're left behind. They're hoping that people are still working to get them out.
One American still stranded, Nasria, spoke to Voice of America. She went to Kabul for her wedding and says the State Department gave them a pickup location to escape.
We went there, waited an extra 12 to 13 hours with no food, no water, nothing.
She waved her American passport at the Taliban and got turned away.
I think to myself, like, am I going to make it home? Am I going to end up living here? Am I going to end up dying here?
Since the State Department says there are no U.S. officials left to verify the identities of the Americans trying to get out, it appears they could be stranded for a while.
Well, as you can see, Afghanistan has reverted back to what we always knew they would be. Ruled by the Taliban, and at the same time, I did not realize there were still Americans over there. I mean, I can understand a whole bunch of Afghans that were left behind, but Americans were actually stayed over just because, again, the troop reduction, things of that nature, and now the Taliban are back in power, and it's always amazing to me when the Taliban said, we are not, I'm sorry, I was about to be extremely profiling. I had to stop myself. We are not, the Taliban are pretty much saying we are not the Taliban of old. They're, that still remains to be determined, considering the fact that they're not letting Americans leave the country as well as Afghans. Now, despite how we said, and I said this before, guys, Biden made the right call on this. Biden made the right call to end the war. It was becoming a second Vietnam. It had to end. Now, regardless of how you feel about the troop withdrawal, I mean, it was bound to happen eventually, and now we are dealing with the leftovers of Americans still being stuck over there. It's a messy situation. It really is. No matter how you look at it, it is not going to be clean and cut. It is going to be ugly. It is going to be messy. And at the same time, a lot of people feel like, oh, we betrayed the multiple lives that were lost over in Afghanistan. No, we haven't. I mean, again, it had to end. Now, had Bush not decided to go after Iraq, we wouldn't even be in Afghanistan. Because the simple fact of the matter is, guys, the only reason we came after Afghanistan, the only reason we went into Afghanistan to begin with was Bin Laden. Bin Laden got taken out with extreme prejudice within 2 years of us being there. We should have just left at that. Honestly, we stayed in Afghanistan 18 years too long. We did. And at the same time, the Taliban have slick moved in, and it's like business as usual. So what does that go to show you? That America has now joined that long line of other countries that tried to go in, tried to colonize Afghanistan, and failed miraculously. But again, hopefully those Americans will be able to get out of the country, because again, it's hard to trust the Taliban about something. Even them saying we're going to have an impacted government, we're going to have women. Women are still going to be able to be on the government. At the same time, women will still be able to work. Everything according to Sharia law. This is the reason why I say conservatives and Taliban have a lot in common, because when it comes down to it, they both stick to their religion as their guiding principles, crazy as they are. But moving right along, guys, speaking of religion, again, religion seems to be in the mix recently just because of the COVID vaccine, and now the excuse for not getting the vaccine is it's against my religion.
Businesses and institutions adopt COVID vaccine mandates for their workers, a new legal battle is emerging.
It pits public health needs against the First Amendment and the right to refuse the shot on religious grounds.
Yeah, to help us break this down, we're joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Danny, good morning. So we've heard these reports of evangelical groups coaching their members on how to skirt these mandates. Now a suit has been filed on behalf of Maine healthcare workers, arguing the vaccine mandate violates their religious liberties. What are these groups saying?
They're essentially saying that the vaccine violates their sincerely held religious beliefs. And generally, these track two theories. One is under 1 Corinthians in the Bible, the notion that the body is a temple. Of course, the answer to that is, well, when was the last time you had another vaccine or a potato chip or a beer or a piece of beef jerky? If your body is a temple, then how pure are the things that you're putting into it? The other position is that this violates sincerely held religious belief against using fetal tissue. And some of this fetal tissue dates back to 1985. But those are the two main tracks that the objectors, or the ones claiming religious exemptions to vaccines, are advancing.
So, Danny, what does the First Amendment protect, and how does that interact with public health measures like the vaccine mandate?
The First Amendment protections are so broad, they take up semesters of law school just on the protections contained in that one short amendment. However, we can whittle it down in this case to the notion of sincerely held religious beliefs. If a court ever reaches that issue, be warned that sincerely held religious beliefs can be very broad. They can be at odds with the main religion's tenets. But arguably, a court may never reach whether or not these folks sincerely believe that their religion prevents them from getting the shot, because the federal law prohibiting discrimination based on religious beliefs only requires a reasonable accommodation if it doesn't create an undue hardship on the employer. To use a silly example, imagine that my religion, I sincerely believe that working is a sin. Well, my employer is not required to accommodate that religious belief that I don't want to work. So there are limits even to sincerely held religious beliefs.
So, Danny, you mentioned that a court may never be able to really determine if this is this sincere religious objection to the vaccine. But what's the process for trying to do so? I mean, how do they try to establish if this is true or if somebody just simply doesn't want the shot?
Here's the mission, and this has been in some of the documents by Liberty Counsel that they have sent letters to employers. And the idea is this, that this is a reasonable accommodation. And because of that, we do reach the issue of sincerely held religious beliefs. And they even have an answer to my beef jerky argument, which is, look, just because this person has had vaccines in the past, just because they may have had pepperoni pizza in the past, and your body is not a temple with a pepperoni pizza, unfortunately. That doesn't mean that the next day they can't wake up and start fresh and be born again and say, look, going forward, I will only take pure things into my body. Then, of course, that raises the factual issue of, well, what are they taking tomorrow? I mean, did they have a pizza tomorrow? Did they have a beer in 2 weeks? Did they smoke a cigarette? So that idea of starting fresh anew every day may not hold water either.
There's a lot of questions here about what's pure food.
Exactly. And if you had it yesterday.
Yeah. Pizza doesn't count, Danny? Are we sure?
I hope it does.
Well, there's healthy pizzas out there.
Yeah, salad pizza. All right, Danny, thank you so much.
I try. I try. I have nothing against religion. I don't. I mean, I'm an Elder's kid. I was raised church of Christ. I don't go to church anymore, but the thing about it is, guys, this is the next step in the anti-vax area. That now they're being told, hey, just say it's against your religion. It's against your religion to get something that's going to help you beat a potentially dangerous, deadly, devastating virus. But the argument is, my body is a temple, and I only put in it things that will help. Okay, for all those that are going to use this, and I love the fact they already pointed this out, the journalists on NBC and NBC already pointed this out, that you cannot use my body is a temple, but if you drink, if you smoke, if you take recreational drugs, if you eat unhealthy food, then the whole my body is a temple thing completely out the window. But this is what they're trying to do. It's a stall tactic. It is. I'm gonna call it what it is. It's stall tactic. For the simple fact of the matter is, guys, that they have no excuse. They're going down the rabbit hole. You know why? Because again, you gotta remember, Pfizer was just FDA approved. FDA approved means that companies are not liable for getting sued if someone sits there and says, well, you're firing me because I refuse to get the shot. See, when you get FDA approved, that means liability and being sued go out the window. That's why companies had to be very, very careful about sitting there and saying, oh, either you get the shot or you're fired. Because you got to remember, there was a hospital in Houston where people try to bring suit to them saying that they're forcing us to get the shot. Hospital workers, which again is still it's still crazy to think about that hospital workers were refusing to get a shot. That screams volumes. Even some hospital workers right now are still trying to find ways around it. And so they're being told, hey, just tell them you don't want to get the shot. It's against your religion. And again, you would have a hard time trying to prove that in court. But these are all stall tactics. These are all just simply saying, I don't want to get the shot. You can't make me, but I still want to work. And I'm sorry, if you work in certain areas where you're going to be around people, hospitals, restaurants, schools, any place that has a lot of foot traffic, you need to be vaccinated. I would say hospitals especially because you're at ground zero. Because you're in a hospital, you're at ground zero. So it's all the more pertinent that you basically be vaccinated. But these unvaccinated folks have nothing to go for. I mean, you see me, I have had this conversation with plenty of people in person. People have tried to ask this question on Facebook. People have asked this question to me on YouTube. And I sit there and say it all the time for these anti-vaxxers. What's your alternative? Oh, I'm just going to live right and eat fruits and things of that nature. It doesn't work that way. Perfectly healthy people have been taken out by this virus in the same sense unhealthy people have been taken out by this virus. It doesn't matter what you do, but sometimes you need to listen to the science. You need to listen to the doctors. You need to listen to those who are medical professionals, because it's amazing how many medical professionals came out of Facebook just last year talking about this virus, talking about the pandemic, talking about these vaccines. Even I sat there and said, because you can go back and check my podcast, when I announced that Pfizer came with a vaccine, I was a little concerned because, again, I'm used to historically vaccines coming out 2 to 4 years at the start of said virus or pandemic. It was record timing that this was already being researched, and that almost nearly a year later we have a vaccine. Well, one had a vaccine, then one, then two, then three. So again, listen to the science. I'm vaccinated, 2 shots, and waiting to get my booster shot in a couple months from now, because I believe in the science. And at the same time, I like living. Living is a wonderfully strong option that you want to take in these cases. Nobody's actually choosing death. So again, in my body's a whole temple argument. Yeah, that's kind of full of crap. But again, I want to talk about the story. I did kind of talk about this next story a little bit earlier when I was talking about unemployment. That, of course, workers are changing jobs and demanding better wages. I have been telling folks because, again, this was actually seen in a recent survey that most U.S. workers are switching jobs and asking for higher wages in the labor market as it continues to heal from the crisis caused by the coronavirus pandemic. I have been saying that, folks. I have been saying that folks are waking up. Folks are waking up to this. Folks are waking up to the simple fact of the matter is the job that they have not only is not going to be satisfying, but the compensation is crappy. Even at the very bottom of this article, it says New York. This was actually done by the New York Federal Reserve. Its survey showed workers almost raise their expectations for how much they should be paid. The average reservation wage, or the minimum annual wage, consumers said that they needed before they would even consider accepting a job offer, has increased sharply from $68,000 to $68,954, almost $69,000, well above the $64,226 back in July of 2020. Now, that's New York. New York is an expensive place to live. But again, I expect the same to happen anywhere else. Folks are realizing that everything's going up with the paycheck. And again, it kind of goes into my other story that I got, that not only with workers are demanding more as far as what they're getting paid for, which they should. This goes into what I've been saying. And I love the fact there's an article on this, that the minimum wage, if it grew in line with productivity, would be $26 an hour right now. Because it's the truth. I have been saying this for the longest time, guys, that the minimum wage still is at $7.25. It's $7.25 an hour. It's been that way since 2009. So that's 12 years. So I have been saying how in productivity, for all those that want to know, just a quick economic lesson. Productivity is basically how much income someone generates for an hour of work. So that's how you determine a country's standard of living. So if you look at this graph right here, this is basically the U.S. since the 1960s. As it sits there and says, since late 1960s, increases in minimum wage have lagged growth in workers' productivity. So, you want to know what's so interesting? We actually, to a certain point, stayed in line right up until about 1969. So, actually, the funny part is, had we stuck with productivity, because as you can see, the line up here, this is productivity, right? This is workers' wages. Now, somewhere along the 1960s, they had a disagreement. Somewhere along the line, 1960, there was a disagreement. Now, had we stayed in line, because again, as you can tell over the years, the workers' actual productivity, I'm sorry, let me wrong. The workers' wages, which is this line, has always been 725. But look at productivity. Productivity has never taken a dip. So again, I can see the point that even in this day and age, that productivity, basically how much we generate, should be up to $26 an hour. Now, again, for a lot of places are still, especially conservative states, are still hanging on to $7.25 an hour. There are some states, I know Seattle raised theirs to $16 an hour. I think some places are actually planning to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour. And don't get me wrong, Fight for 15 is a great site, great movement, but $15 an hour is basically based on the cheapest amount of somebody who is single with no kids living in the cheapest part of town. Now, if you're like me, you live in Nashville, there's no such thing as cheap part of town. Almost every part of Middle Tennessee is woefully inflated. So again, $15 an hour isn't going to cut it. But $26 an hour? And I keep saying this the entire time. If the minimum wage was raised to $26 an hour, you would see a monumental impact on the economy. But it goes back into the argument again. But what if I don't want to pay $26 an hour? What are you doing to owe $26 an hour? It's only, you know, the funny part is that's only being said by those who make less. Again, you should be angry at your employer for paying you that much if you do a lot, personally. But at the same time, you can't be mad. You can't be mad if we're sitting there fighting for higher minimum wages. And again, I'm sorry for businesses. If you employ people and you can't pay them enough to work off a living wage, don't go into business. I would know that, one day I hope to be a future business owner, and I want to pay people to where they don't need another job, to where they don't have to take a second job unless they want to. Completely up to them. But, I want to be able to sit there and say, hey, you work for me. I take care of your insurance. I give you to where you can live comfortably. That's it. That's how it should be. I remember a long time ago when I first started working in a factory at 18 years old, production factory at 18 years old, they paid for all the health insurance. And yes, it was $14 an hour, but I was 18 years old. I was 18 years old and I was a college student. I took what I can get. The need for increasing the minimum wage back then wasn't as strong as it is now. So again, with that being said, guys, there's just there has to be a stopping point somewhere in this. That's all I'm saying. Hopefully, like I said, with this Congress, I'm not too sure about them raising minimum wage because, again, it just seems like they're focusing all on the wrong things. Democrats, it's very hard for you. Like I said, Democrats being very, very smart, but yet when it comes down to it, they don't toe the party line. The last story I got, guys, unfortunately, is going back to Texas again because remember, Greg Abbott did sign this crazy abortion law into effect that not only prevented abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy, which most women don't find out until much later. He also sat there and deputized citizens to basically rat out or report those that are helping someone get an abortion, whether it's driving them, seeing them, or performing on them. Yes, you deputize citizens. That part of that crazy law, which I said is really not a big difference between Nazi Germany and Texas right now. But anyway, a website was created by a right to life group called Pro-Life Whistleblower, which is a website created so people can anonymously. I love the fact that I see this. I love the fact that I see this in a journalistic article right now. A website created so people can anonymously snitch on abortions in Texas has been shut down for a second time. Which this Texas Right to Life, which is a pro-life group, had created this site called prolifewhistleblower.com. It went dark this week for a second time. The first time because it was so overloaded with false tips. The second time, of course, it was taken down was because it was basically being sued by Planned Parenthood and also other abortion right groups that decided to bombard the site. It is amazing to me that only in Texas would they go so far to scarlet letter women, even though women are pro-choice. There's just no other way around it. There's no such thing as pro-life. There's always pro-choice. But again, it is amazing to me that they are already trying to put into places, especially with this, especially with putting sites in like this, that you can go out and you can go snitch on someone. But I'm thankfully, as I said, I'm glad that the site went down. I'm glad the site went down. I'm glad that Texas hasn't instituted yet a way of doing this. But trust me, I'm still waiting on Supreme Court, which again, I was surprised they let this go, but it will be challenged in court. Roe versus Wade is still the law of the land, and the Supreme Court has to enforce it. But just like I said on my previous podcast, guys, this is what's going to happen with a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. That if they let Roe versus Wade just be in the background while Texas puts in its own law, imagine what else gets challenged. That alone should be scary and enough for Congress to sit there and go, okay, we're going to do the same thing we did to you. We're going to do the same thing y'all guys did to us. We're going to overpack the court. Amazingly enough, it hasn't been done already. But again, we'll follow that story as it comes along. But anyway, we're going to get to our feel-good segment because usually on How the Frack we got here, we cover a lot of things. There's sometimes doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose faith in humanity. And of course, at the end of the day, this is hump day. It's Wednesday. Tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday. We are coming off a shortened work week because of Labor Day. So we want to, leave you guys with some pep in your step. Something to make you feel great. Something that, inspires you a little bit. And I wanted to tell this story because, again, this is the guy who is literally trying to help out people, especially in the ways of mental health. And I love the approach this guy did. Check the story out.
In my community, we're taught to survive. I spent a whole lifetime saying, why me? Why me? And then it all hit. This is why, because I was going to be used to build a platform so people can get some help. And when you think about here in Chicago, it's such a divide when it comes to having the resources, which is why we took a risk. We'll open up this amazing coffee shop so we can say we're going to step out and we're going to pay for people to get some help because healing is a marathon.
For a long time, I sort of suffered in silence. This series is trying to shine a light on these topics.
There is no stigma to me. It's mine.
We want to normalize talking about hard stuff so we can be on the road to healing. Fair enough? Fair enough. Fair.
Christopher Lamarck cares for his Chicago community as he knows firsthand how it feels to not be cared for.
I was abandoned and abused for a span of 12 years. Essentially, the first 30 years of my life was super traumatic. And I dealt with a lot of complications, physical, mental, and emotional abuse, high levels of rejection. And so I carried all of that. I spent a lot of years being extremely lonely.
But you made it out.
Yeah, I definitely made it out. And I'm super proud of that. And that's why I say healing is a marathon, man. You can't rush this.
In October 2018, Christopher experienced what he calls a breakdown at a coffee shop.
And I just started crying uncontrollably. I just couldn't stop. And so I went to therapy. After some challenging sessions, my therapist sat up in his seat and he said, it wasn't your fault that you were abused. And for the first time, I heard it because I had been feeling like it was my fault, right? Because that's what happens. It's so much shame that comes with being abused.
As Christopher worked to heal his own trauma, he felt called to help others do the same.
I went home one day and I wrote down 3 words. I wrote down coffee because of the mental and emotional breakdown happened inside of a coffee shop. And then hip hop. Hip hop saved my life from committing suicide. I always had a chance to write. It was my first form of therapy. And mental health, because in my community, we're taught to survive. And we wasn't talking about it, so I wanted to normalize this conversation.
And with that, the nonprofit organization Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health was born.
What's on your menu? You've got some funky coffee names?
Yes, so we got the Beehive, which is a honey lavender latte, paying homage like to Beyonce. And then we have the Diddy, which is a cold brew with a shot of espresso and some buttered pecan.
Yep.
So
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. And the Queen Latifah chai. So many things to pay homage to the incredible artists that do this hip hop thing.
Can I get a little side of warm meek milk in my Diddy?
You know what? You absolutely can. Do you want oat or do you want 2%? You want almond? Let me know.
I love it, man.
But at this coffee shop, every hip-hop inspired drink goes to free therapy sessions for individuals in need.
Knowing, Chris, what you know now, that you had to deal with it. You've been holding all this emotional PTSD baggage since you were a kid, and now you know the importance of dealing with it. How do you help other people in the community deal with their stuff?
Number one, we start like creating safe spaces for people to talk about their stuff without bias, consequences, or judgment. And also they can't afford it. So we said, what we're going to do is sell coffee and merchandise, and we're going to see if we can pay for 250 people to go to therapy.
Individuals like Chicago public school teacher Faith Overall.
If I had to pay out of pocket, chances were I was just going to have to skip out on therapy, right? So if we have to choose between what's going to provide a roof over our head and what's going to help us to navigate life, we're kind of conditioned to provide the roof over our heads instead. And so having access to free therapy gave me the opportunity to actually get to what I needed to get to. Being an educator, I think that you can talk to anyone and they have a story about a teacher that harmed them. And chances are that's because that teacher themselves was unhealed. So if I heal myself, I have the opportunity to heal my students.
Why do you think it's so difficult to break the stigma of normalizing therapy and communicating and talking about your issues in certain areas? Why is it so hard?
So when you think about going to therapy, it's almost like an uncomfortable thing. Why are you going to therapy? What's wrong with you? Because we share that language, that misinformation, not having a proper understanding, people are afraid to be ultimately vulnerable. I want to tell people that it's probably one of the most beautiful things you can do for yourself, and it's actually very strong to be vulnerable, to own your emotions.
And with Christopher's help, this community is starting to do just that.
And what's been the reaction from the people, from a couple hundred people that have gotten free therapy that never had it? What are they saying to you, when they walk in the coffee shop?
Thank you. Thank you for this. Man, this is amazing. I wish I had this. People don't come in just for a cup of coffee. They come in because of the therapeutic transaction. The space is filled with tranquility and peace and love. People want to be seen. And we tell our staff, make sure you love on them. And that's the issue. A lot of people are not seen. And we give them opportunity for a single moment to be heard and to be seen. I tell people all the time, healing is the new cool. That is the new cool. And we just have to keep saying that over and over again. And that's how you re-change the narrative.
And I thought that was pretty cool. Again, mental health is, I can't even begin to, well, let me stop playing the video first. I can't even begin to start on that. Mental health is everything. If you need somebody or somebody to talk to, things of that nature, there are many, many resources out there. You are definitely not alone. I love what that man did. He literally took something that was, that challenged his life and he turned it into a positive for others. And again, mental health is everything, guys. I keep saying this all the time. And I love the fact that he said healing is a marathon. And dude, I the first time I saw this, I said, first and foremost, I miss coffee. I do. I don't drink coffee as much as I used to, especially good coffee that kept me up and full of sugar. I used to throw so much sugar and cream in my coffee. It wasn't even funny. But again, the whole thing of what he's done so far, I just thought that was pretty cool. At the same time, if I have ever in Chicago, I will definitely find this place because, again, hip hop, coffee. I mean, there's just hip hop, coffee, hip hop, and mental health. I mean, the man's doing great work, and I have to commend him for that. But anyway, that's really going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know that this has been uploaded, because this is recorded. Had to record a little bit earlier today just because my schedule changes. Like I said before, kind of have to make things work nowadays just because of life. But hey, the bus is still going to be rolling no matter what we do. So before I do get out of here, I do some shameless plugging. I do want to always comment on my brother-in-arms, Big BZA Dot, which definitely he can be found on Facebook at Von Westwood at Facebook, or Big BZA Dot on socials. Definitely does have a couple of podcasts that he loves to do. Smoking Trailer Sundays, every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m., in which he shows trailers of movies and video games, things that he loves and also wants to share with you. He also does the RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by WorldStar, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. as well. He also does streaming on the streaming games that he loves to play, called Making Plays, things of that nature. If you want to find that out and other news that he may go to, definitely hit him up on his credentials, if you will. Von Westwood on Facebook, or Big BZA Dot on all socials. Now, let me not also forget my other podcasting brothers in arms that I just met over last year, Ari and Geek present Geek Salad. You can definitely find them on Facebook and on YouTube. They are a bunch of blurs just like us, like discuss everything in the fandom world, everything from Marvel and DC and video games and new things of that nature, and even fitness. Sometimes we're kind of working on that. Hopefully, doing a very collaboration very soon. But definitely check them out on Facebook and on YouTube. Ari and Geek present Geek Salad. Again, nice couple of good brothers. Definitely like and subscribe from them as well. Now, as far as yours truly, the link at the bottom, you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for all of my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course the Off Limits podcast. Definitely like and subscribe and subscribe to all of them. Like I said, I'm trying to make this my permanent job. I would love to do this all day, but unfortunately, unless I win the lottery, which, hey, you never know. You might win both lotteries, and then I would be doing this every day for the rest of my life and be content. I'm just saying. But again, guys, definitely like, share, and follow. And of course, if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I'm just trying to make this podcast better for everybody to enjoy. This is, like I said, it's all about informing. We are not trying to change minds or persuade people, like I usually say at the end of all this. But before I get to my ending, I do have to always stand and say, guys, again, I have been saying this for almost a year. COVID-19 is real. The Delta variant is real. Guys, if you're not vaccinated, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? I don't want to hear it's not FDA approved. You can't use that anymore. I don't want to get the shot because it gets my religion. But you'll eat pepperoni pizza, drink, and smoke and vape. Stop with the excuses. You want to get back to some sense of normalcy like the rest of the world, then join the rest of the world. Otherwise, the rest of the world will move on without you. You are seeing that as jobs are requiring vaccines now. You are seeing that health insurance will go up if you are not vaccinated. You've seen that a lot of businesses and companies will require you to be vaccinated, or you simply can't enter. The world is moving on without you. Join us, or consider a new way of life. Like I said, it could be like The Walking Dead. You could be like the no, I'm not gonna do that. I was gonna say you could be like the Whispers. Anyway, for all those that don't know. But again, join the rest of the world. It's not that hard. And also help us out. When you take care of yourself, you take care of each other. That's why I keep saying it's not just about you. We really need to be doing the things to take care of others, because so many other people right now are prone to getting sick that we really need to do our part and prevent that. Aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds. We're not trying to persuade people. We are simply doing what the news stations of old try to do. Give you all the facts and allow you to make up your mind for yourself. We do a lot better in society as we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We right the wrongs of our past by doing the things we should have done a long time ago, like elect our first Madam Vice President who was Black. Still hoping for Michelle Obama in 2024, because we need you, Michelle. When you were here, the world was a great place. And also, your husband was pretty cool, too, and I would love to see him as Supreme Court Justice. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know you guys' opinions on everything that we talked about. Aside from that, guys, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.